Hey everyone, welcome to movie review number 12, where I'll be covering the movie Men in Black 2, which came out in 2002. This kind of follows off of movie review number 11, which was the original Men in Black. Now, if you grew up in the late 80s and 90s, then the original Men in Black was probably one of your favorite movies as a 10-year-old. I know it was for me. It had a pretty cool, slick take on pseudo-realistic science fiction that blended conspiracies, government secrecy, and aliens just right. The original Men in Black was a great movie, and it became a classic for good reason. 5 years later, this sequel came out, and I thought it was pretty disappointing. It makes a lot of flaws that sequels are so prone to, and it cheapened the movie and made it feel kind of like a money grab. I mean, it was a money grab. The plot is almost exactly the same as the original. You have a singular big bad alien who comes to Earth looking for some tiny object of immense value and power, and the agents of MIB have a wacky adventure full of near misses and snappy one-liners. They have the final fight where they shoot the big bad with their big guns, and it blows up and the day is saved. It's not super complicated. Furthermore, all of the technology that they introduced in the first movie gets used again, but on a bigger scale that kind of cheapens it. Specifically, I'm talking about the neuralizer technology. In the first movie, there was multiple scenes that showed that it worked most effectively if you were up close to it and you looked right at it. In this movie, they fire a big neuralizer out of the Statue of Liberty, and it conveniently erases the memories of everybody in New York, even if they weren't looking at it or if they were behind a wall. It's just kind of silly, and it always breaks my immersion when technology is used inconsistently across films. You know, the new Star Wars movie really had a big flaw with this, with their lightspeed drive, making a ship being used as a suicide ram. That kind of broke the internal consistency of the universe because that's never been used before. But that's a whole different movie review that I'll get into sometime in the future. Now, in the first Men in Black film, the big bad is that gnarly bug alien, and that was pretty cool. I mean, he was sufficiently alien, he was biologically plausible, and all around pretty badass. But the big bad in Men in Black 2 is a shape-shifting alien, which I've always thought was the most unrealistic thing ever. And I've also thought that it's kind of uncreative, because you don't really have to do any makeup. You can just have them turn into a person. And, you know, whatever you need them to be to fit the scene, you can just have them turn into that. So it's kind of like this really malleable aspect of the story that makes it super easy to tell the story. I don't know, I just think it's kind of lazy storytelling. Now, shapeshifting in the sense of changing color and changing your texture like an octopus, I mean, that's one thing. But this movie, and many others like it, depict shapeshifters as these impossible creatures that can create or lose mass at will, radically change their body shape as if they have no bones or hard parts at all, and growing or shrinking to extreme sizes that biologically could not happen. Their bodies would collapse under their own water weight and weakness of the bone tissue or whatever, or the skin would rip. You know, there's all kinds of different problems, but they just totally ignore it. And this kind of impossible stuff has always kind of irked me, because it's not only biologically implausible, it's not even physically possible in many circumstances. I mean, creating matter, losing matter as you grow or shrink, I mean, it's stupid. And of course, because you gotta have your sex appeal, the shape-shifting alien just so happens to take on the form of a beautiful lingerie model. In the opening scene of the movie, we first see this weird worm-like plant creature crawling around on Earth, before it comes across a magazine on the ground that flips open in the wind to a page with a lingerie model, and so that's the form that it takes. Never mind how this tiny little plant thing develops into the mass of an actual adult human, or how it makes a giant monster noise as it eats a guy in 2 seconds. It's not really explained, it's just supposed to be silly. You're not really supposed to take it that seriously, I suppose. Anyway, as the movie progresses, this monster, this shape-shifting thing, eats more and more stuff, and it grows to an incredible size. It gains hundreds of tons of biomass in a few days, which would suggest an extreme metabolic rate that would produce a ton of heat. At one point, this shape-shifting alien inhabits the body of a larger alien named Jeff. Jeff is a giant worm-like thing, kind of like the worms from Dune or the movie Tremors, and Jeff lives in the subway system underneath New York. Now, the only way that I can think that something that size got down there was if Jeff was brought to Earth as a larva or an egg, and he was hatched and raised in the New York subway systems. And that's kind of cool, but then I wonder how no one noticed him digging around down there for who knows how many years. There's even a scene in the movie where he zips by a whole bunch of people on a pedestrian platform and they all kind of go back to their papers and their magazines and flip their pages. And it's like they're used to it or something, like they see it all the time. But it's never mentioned. No one makes a comment about this giant alien worm living in the tunnel. Like, it doesn't make sense. I mean, it's all kind of for humor, but it's kind of decomposing the internal consistency that was established in the first Men in Black. There's also a bunch of really tiny aliens living in Agent K's locker, and they provide a little bit of comedy fodder, but they're not really all that interesting. They're aliens, but they look like little marmoset people with antennae. They could have been given some weird, unique style of clothing or some unique alien architecture or culture or something, but they seem to have human buildings and human architectural styles, straight down to XXX strip clubs, and a Moses-like preacher getting up on a hilltop to preach to them. It's not very creative, it's not very imaginative, it's not very alien. There's a few other aliens that we see throughout the movie that are also really humanoid, like the scaled reptile man, the poop-looking alien who is literally the butt of a poop joke, and the famous Balchinian, who has balls on its chin. I mean, you can tell this was a money grab because they were trying to make kids laugh because they were aiming this at families, and I mean, that's Hollywood, you gotta make money. But I just think it's kind of lame when you rot the seriousness and the tone that was set by the original movie. Kind of a disservice to the original movie. Now, there's another scene earlier in the movie where a retired Agent K is working at a post office, and Agent J comes by to recruit him again. He needs to be convinced, so Agent J makes all of the alien co-workers at the post office reveal themselves, because there's a throwaway line that everybody who works at the post office is an alien. So, you see that there's some humanoid alien with a tiny bald head. There's a giant worm thing with a bunch of arms, but it has no mouth and just one giant eye. The next alien has two mouths stacked on top of each other, which seems a little redundant and awkward, as the lower jaw of the upper mouth is the upper jaw of the lower mouth, so chewing or talking with both mouths at once might get complicated. The last alien that you see here in the post office is also really, really humanoid, but it just has like 40 arms. Why would an alien evolve 40 arms? Apparently for sorting mail. These are all cases of the movie creators not really thinking too hard about what kind of aliens they're designing. They weren't thinking about evolutionary lineages or biological plausibility. They weren't taking it that seriously. They just wanted some freaky alien variety to throw at the viewer and make kids go, "Ah, cool." I mean, that's really how I would summarize this whole movie. The plot is it's a shallow carbon copy of the first movie. The antagonist is a one-dimensional bad guy who wants to destroy entire planets, and unique species of aliens are just ham-fisted in to be used for comedic relief. From what I can tell, Men in Black 2 wanted a colorful cast of wacky-looking aliens, and that's exactly what they got. There's little to no appreciation for evolutionary influences, biology, or really even the basic laws of physics in a lot of these cases. If you haven't seen it and you liked the first movie, Men in Black 2 is worth seeing once or twice, but it's not great. It's pretty clearly made to be a forgettable summer blockbuster that follows a well-worn money-making template. I give its plot a 4 out of 10, and its depiction of biology a 3 out of 10. It's pretty bad, it's not good, but it could be worse.